welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personality, politicians, and perspectives. Oh, politicians, by the way, here's a note. We just got it up the AP wire. Air Force One is now over Fort Sumter on its way to Mar-a-Lago, Florida. I understand by good sources that the guns in Fort Sumter were not trained.
Oh, dear.
All right, let's get serious. We've got a nice man with us this morning.
Well, yes.
Who comes to us on a regular basis, and we really appreciate, not number one, his knowledge, my goodness, but the fact that he's always nice about, and he always smiles when he walks through that door.
I think he'd grin if you kicked him. We had to genuflect this morning, though, when he came in. Because Chris has always been terribly important to us, but he is now...
And to the community.
Yes, at large. He is now acting meteorologist in charge. And we
so if you don't like things, call him.
if you're having a bad weather day, give Chris a call. I'll read his number later. Get a pencil and paper and be ready. Oh, Chris is a great fellow, and he is a meteorologist, and he's right on the money all the time, aren't you, Chris?
I try my hardest. Every once in a while.
I took a semester of meteorology under Dr. Oglesby. No. Anyway, in any event, all I remember about meteorology course is the Beaufort scale.
Yes, sir.
And that's all I remember.
Well, you're ahead of me.
Yeah, well, you see, you didn't take. I took it so I wouldn't have to take college chemistry.
Smart choice.
Which I thought was a good choice.
Well, Chris, now that you're the acting meteorologist in charge, how big is the territory that belongs to you now?
Sure. Yeah, we have a territory of 35 counties in central and eastern Illinois.
That's big.
It's big. It's big.
So we're only 101
stretching from where to where,
anyway.
Mr. Miller?
Right. Yeah, we've got 1/3 of the state, a little more. It stretches from as far northwest as Galesburg.
Really?
That's north.
Pretty much down I-74 all the way to the Indiana border. So through Peoria, Bloomington, Danville, Champaign-Urbana. Then we go south on the Indiana border down to Lawrenceville, Vincennes in southeast Illinois. That's a couple counties south of I-70. We cover Effingham, then we come back up toward Shelbyville, Taylorville, Springfield, Jacksonville, Rushville, and then all the way back up to Galesburg and everything in between. So, Lincoln.
Can you do anything about that
Cater.
very nice lady in Springfield who doesn't give me the reports I want to hear?
Oh.
Well, seriously, now, we've talked with Mr. Miller often. We really appreciate your coming up here, Chris.
Well, thank you.
People just kind of take the weather for granted, and you can't do that.
Well, unless they get torqued about it.
The winds coming from up over the mountains come all the way into the plains here, and they affect us, some of it. And continuing on into the Connecticut area.
Yep.
What will be an unusual day for you, Chris?
Oh, goodness. An unusual day for us is going to be the hazardous weather, because it doesn't occur that often. Most days are kind of like what we're seeing today. You get some sunshine, you're dealing with clouds. Yeah, you're not. It's not raining or snowing or anything like that. But I'm talking about the bigger storms, not your, we got 2 or 3, 4 inches of snow. I'm talking about things like your massive blizzards, your flooding. Flooding events tend to develop very quickly. We can see signs ahead of time, but to pinpoint an area, it's the same thing with tornadoes. We can get a general area and say, look, the northern half of Illinois is expected to have the potential for this. And then as the storms start developing, then we can get further into breaking it down by county, by location, things like that. So that would really be an unusual day, and a day can turn very quickly when you get a massive storm. We had a storm last year that produced in less than 6 hours up around Roanoke, east of Peoria. They had 9 inches of rain in less than 6 hours. Massive flooding. We had warnings out, fortunately. Nobody lost their life. But we had basements and houses were collapsing, and the flooding was just catastrophic in that area. And so we were feeding information to emergency managers for that.
Here in the flatlands where we are, we don't think of flooding as a real problem.
Right.
But if you've got 6 inches of water in your basement, it's a real problem.
It's a problem. Yeah, I remember a flood we had here in Lincoln shortly after we moved here. It was in the late 90s. And our neighborhood, anyway, we had 5 inches of rain in 1 hour. And
no place for it to run.
No.
Did you have a flood in your house at that time?
We had water in the basement.
Sure.
Yeah, a little bit. It got to about a foot deep.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. My neighbor across the street from me, his washing machine was floating in his basement.
No.
It was that much water.
That much water.
It was just terrible. And a lot of people
it's got no place to go when it's coming like that.
And we just don't think of that here in central Illinois as flooding as a serious weather problem. Now we get over around Havana, that's another story. We're
Exactly.
We're in the watershed over there.
Yeah, and we see different kinds of flooding. We have the flooding, like you mentioned, Havana up toward Peoria and down to Beardstown, those areas, because you're on the Illinois River, and that river will ebb and flow and rise, and you got barges on the river and everything else. So we're forecasting for that as well, and the Sangamon River and a lot of some of the smaller creeks around here. And some people will say, well, I don't have a creek near me or a river or anything that's going to cause flooding like that. I'm okay. What we're seeing more and more of is flooding from heavy rain. As we said, it can pile up very quickly. It all depends on does the sewer system, can it handle that water?
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of our infrastructure is aging. Okay, Springfield's a perfect example of that. You get in the downtown Springfield area, and if they get a heavy rain, it floods automatically. We know that because of the aging sewer system they have there. I don't know if they have any plans to do make it better, but that's expensive.
Well, maybe they're just up to having hopes now, and they'll make plans later.
Well, see, and that's just it. There was a case where Springfield at the state fair just a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, they had a similar thing, 4 or 5 inches of rain in 1 hour. The fairgrounds was underwater. Happy Hollow was not very happy because
they're low to start with.
Yeah, they're very low. And actually, we looked at some old maps, and the old maps showed that actually, when the state fairgrounds was first put there was a creek that ran through there. They closed it off, and they kind of ran it under the fairgrounds. And
one can't mess with Mother Nature's water flow.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
So
when we first moved here 50 some odd years ago, I was really kind of afraid because come spring there were tornado watches and tornado warnings and tornado watches and tornado warnings, and I thought, holy Friday, what's the business here?
Yep.
Let's take the history of our wonderful weather facility out here north of town.
Yeah.
On Airport Road. People drive by there on the way to Champaign and see that big golf ball up there. What is that? So let's just take when we first built that weather station and kind of go through the history of that, because it is really very important to everybody here in central Illinois, stretching Bloomington to Springfield and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And this all started back in the 1980s when the National Weather Service determined that the radar system we had in place was not adequate for the country. And there were new developments in radar with Doppler radar that had really actually been tested and played around with since the 50s and 60s. But the Doppler radar, they had a plan to put them in the United States in various locations. So the question was, where are we going to put it in central Illinois? Of course, there were a lot of areas that said, pick me, put it in my town,
Sure, yeah.
So Peoria, Springfield, Champaign, they were all kind of, bidding to get this radar, Decatur even. And then as the Weather Service was looking around, one of the things that we had to have for the radar is we had to have an open area as far away from tall buildings as possible. there would have been too much interference having it at the airport in Springfield or Peoria and the other places. And as they looked around, they thought, well, what about right in the middle between Springfield, Peoria, Bloomington, Decatur, and you've got Lincoln right there, kind of as that hub. Plus, politics may have played a role in that as well.
No, really?
Sure.
Yeah. Bob Michael had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And this was his district. In his district, he had a pretty good sized district, but so he had a lot to do with that. And of course, at the time, our county board here in Logan County just did a fantastic job stepping up and saying, hey, we've got this property just south of the landing strip here at the airport. Consider this. So they looked at it and they said, this is an ideal location. And so then the plans got solidified in the early 90s. I think it was 92, and by 93, late 93, construction started, and we were moving things in late 94, early 95. So,
And when did you come, Chris?
right near the beginning.
Yeah.
We started moving people in February of 95. I arrived in May. Right after, literally just 4 days after the tornado that went through Elkhart.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Back in May of '95
yeah.
And I didn't come from far. I was up in Peoria at the time. We used to have a weather station there at the airport, and I transferred from the Peoria weather office to the Lincoln office as a brand spanking new lowly forecaster.
Well, you know, seriously, we always think of economic impact. Like the two colleges here, they have a tremendous economic impact in our community. Rather small area out there physically, but a pretty doggone significant economic impact in our community with the payroll and so forth.
Yes.
Speaking of economic impact, we always have to think in terms of sponsors here. Otherwise, we don't have any impact at all. So we'll turn that over to Mr. Ash. Right, go ahead, Jim. Right, back live in the studios here at WLCN 96.3, high on the windy hill here at Lazy Roll. Our guest this morning, a really nice gentleman. And I use those words, select those two words, because I know whereof I speak. And not only that, he's a smart dude, too. And he and Mrs. Miller raised 3 smart daughters, of which he's very proud. As a matter of fact, we'll give him some airtime to talk about them. Chris is our weatherman in charge right now at the weather station out there on Route 10. We drive by it, we don't think much of it. It performs a very needed service for all of the citizens in the community, not just Lincoln, Logan County. Their territory extends far and wide. And they've got a bunch of specialists out there who, when 2 or 3 raindrops fall on the leaf, they know what the heck's going on. Chris, how many do you have out there?
Right now, there are 21 of us.
Are there that many?
Yep, including myself.
As I said, a major economic impact in the community.
Yes, yeah, we've got a staff of 21. Of those 21, 15 are meteorologists, so they have their degree in meteorology from an accredited university. But the other 6 are no less important. They do a fantastic job. We've got an excellent staff of electronics technicians at our office because there's lots of moving parts, literally.
Oh, I'm sure.
With the radar and the weather balloons that we do. That's a completely separate system. And the computers we have and the programming that needs to be done for those computers. So we've got a staff of 3 guys that do, the computer programming. They make sure that the equipment is working well so that our staff can do their job. But it's not just here. They also work on equipment at the airport in Peoria because there's automated weather observing equipment that the Weather Service owns.
Sure.
And it's in Peoria, Decatur, Springfield, Champaign-Urbana, and Mattoon.
So they travel
So-
from town to town then?
They travel from Lincoln to the various towns to do routine maintenance, repairs on that equipment. And that's not just for us to forecast the weather. The primary reason is for the pilots. So they get, because literally if you're a pilot, you can tune to a radio frequency, or it's also on the telephone you can dial if you need to. Up to the minute, every minute, weather observations from that airport. And that equipment needs to be working for general aviation, but also for the flights that are taking off daily at those airports. So really important spread of information. And I want to add, too, that our staff with the forecasting, I described the 35 county area earlier that we cover, but we also have a very close relationship and daily provide information to the Illinois State Emergency Operations Center in Springfield, which is run by Illinois Emergency Management Agency. And the state EOC is a combination of all the state agencies and some federal agencies, including our own. FEMA's with them, and we're with them, and others, Homeland Security and whatnot. But think of every state agency, Department of Transportation, State Police, Agriculture, all of them are part of that state EOC. And anytime there's a disaster, natural or man-made, in the state of Illinois, we are providing weather information for the entire state. So we're literally forecasting for the entire state of Illinois.
That's a long way from Rockford to Cairo.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
And last week there was snow in the forecast. Not really for us so much, but up around the Quad Cities and Rockford and areas like that. And so we were giving them information so that they could make decisions, because think about what's going on now. The state is transporting more and more every day COVID vaccines all over the state.
Yes.
And so if there is a snowstorm expected in a part of the state, that's going to delay the shipment of the vaccines or things like that. So we provide the weather information so that they can adjust their plans if they need to.
We have no concept, have we, of how intertwined everything in the world is. We plain people just don't understand.
Yes,
For instance, now we go out. Somebody goes out there twice a day and blows a little air in the balloon and release the balloon, and that to which attached to that balloon is meteorological instruments. And somewhere along the line, it comes down a couple, 3 or 4 or 5 hours later, whatever. What would be the average time a balloon would be aloft, Chris?
Aloft, it would, by the time it bursts, it's about 2 hours from the time we release
that
it.
That balloon
and then,
burst.
Yeah.
Where it is, whatever the altitude is intended to burst.
Right.
And then the stuff parachutes down.
Exactly. Yeah, it bursts at about a height of almost 20 miles up. So about a little over, about 100,000 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so to put that in perspective, if anybody's ever flown in a jetliner, typically their cruising altitude, depending on the weather, is about 35,000 feet roughly. So the weather balloon goes up 3 times higher than the average jetliner. It'll come down. It takes it comes down a little quicker. It rises pretty slowly, but it comes down in a little over an hour, hour and a half. So it's totally aloft for about 3.5 hours roughly before it hits
What would
the ground.
be the average temperature up there?
About 60 below zero.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's cold up
Now,
there.
is that year-round, Chris?
Pretty much. It varies.
Now, the skin of that balloon, am I correct in this? The skin of that balloon would be contracting in that colder wear up there.
Well, expanding, you're right, because of the contracting, because of the temperature, but it's more influenced by the air pressure.
The pressure as opposed to the temperature.
Okay.
Yeah, and the air pressure up there is virtually nothing. And it expands. When we release it, the balloon has a diameter of about 5 feet across. So not like the hot air balloons we see around here, that's smaller than that, but about 5 feet across or so. When it bursts, it expands to about 30 to 35 feet across.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, what does one do? Farmer Smith walking through his field, he finds this pair parachute down there with these instruments. What does the farmer do with that?
Well,
What's he supposed to do?
what they should do, and we've had a number of them around here because usually in the summer they usually land
don't go that
locally.
far.
No, they don't go far in the summer. You don't have a lot of wind above the ground during the late summer, especially July, August, which is exactly why we have our balloon festival in August, because typically there's not a lot of wind, usually,
go.
except on Balloon Fest weekend. So that's usually the way it works. But anyway. Yeah, what if they find one lying in a field or in a property or in something like hanging in a tree? A lot of them end up hanging in trees. It'll have a lot of string tied to it, and the orange parachute. You just cut that string away, and probably the remnants of the balloon. There's the bottom of the balloon will be left over. Because it's a big rubber, solid rubber neck on the bottom of that balloon. But you can just cut that off, dispose of all that, and the instrument package itself, it's very small. It's about, think of like, say, the shoe box for a man's shoe. It's about half that size.
Oh,
Yeah, it's very small.
my gosh.
And weighs barely a pound, if that. And that can be sent back to us. There's instructions right on the piece of equipment that say, here's what you should do with this. Please, there's a mailing bag inside. Postage paid, you just send it back, and we can use them again.
Grab your headphones, Mr. Miller. We have a question here. Mr. Miller, all right, go ahead, please, caller.
Okay, I was wondering if a person has a weather radio, is there somebody I could help program? And also, do you ever have open houses where people can come visit?
Okay, yeah, very good question. So regarding
Go ahead, Chris.
regarding weather radio, yeah, that's a little bit, that's a tougher one. We do program weather radios. We do help program those. And you hear this all the time lately, but it's because of COVID.
Yes.
We would just tell somebody, bring it out to the weather office, and we could program it for you.
Oh, I see. Another service.
At the moment, we can't have any visitors, anybody in the building, that type of thing. So, depending on the brand of the radio, a lot of these radios are Midland radios because they have a lion's share of the market. Now, there are others out there. But Midland Radio they've got a customer service department that will help you program your radio. I guess the best thing that I can tell the caller, if you need help programming a radio, you really want to get this radio going, we might be able to help you over the phone, talk you through it, if we know exactly the model of radio and that type of thing. And I'll give our phone number. We have a public service number, which is it's listed. It's out there. If anybody can call it. It's a local number. It's 732-3089.
732-3089. Weather Service.
That's correct. And so if you have a question about programming your weather radio, you need something weather related that you can't find online through the local TV stations. We take calls from anybody that has questions or need information from us.
Now, Mr. Miller, who sets off that doggone alarm about 2 in the morning when there's a wind off somewhere and I'm deep asleep and my little weather radio goes off? Who set those off, sir?
That would be me or one of my staff members.
I've been looking for you for a long time.
We are the ones that alert people even in the middle of the
serious note.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just
right
want to
ahead.
mention that the
ahead,
caller
please.
had another question too about tours or open house.
Right.
We had last fall, we had our 25th anniversary of the weather office in Lincoln. We were
Has it
planning,
been that long?
it's been 25 years, and we were planning an open house, and our little nemesis, COVID, had other ideas.
Reared its ugly head.
so we
Which
were,
is a shame because I've been on previous tours that you've been kind enough to offer out there, and it's intensely interesting to tour that facility. Just walk around, keep your mouth shut and your ears open, and it's very, very interesting to see. So it was a fair question on the caller's part.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully COVID will let up on us a little bit.
When that abates, we want to get back to planning that open house. Last time we had an open house, since we cover a good sized area, we had I think 800 people.
Did you?
Came out there for and it was this was only for about an 8-hour period. It was like 9 to 5 on a Saturday in late September one year. And we had quite a few people show up. But we do offer, again, in a post-COVID world,
Yes.
we offer tours. We do tours at our office all the time. I get calls. I used to get calls for tours. Everything from homeschool groups that want to bring, some children in, to I have an organization of men, women, teenagers, whatever, that want to come out and tour the weather office. We limit it to about 20 at the most because it's at one time, because we don't have the biggest space for a lot of people all at once. But I got calls from parents that would say, my 9-year-old child is a weather freak. They love weather ever since they were tiny. It's their birthday. Can I bring them out?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I had one mom bring a birthday cake into our conference room. I never would have thought that the weather office here in Lincoln would be a center for a birthday party.
Well, that was neat, though. I bet that made that kid's birthday special.
And let
On
me
a
tell
serious
you,
note, meteorology as a career, that can be an excellent career, but you have to start at the beginning. You've got to have those math things that are very easy for you, and science that comes. It's you have to have a feel for that, and then if you've got a youngster who shows those propensities, boy, let's hone that, because there's a possibility of a very excellent career.
Absolutely, and I start at a young age. I myself was 8 years old when
Is that right?
That was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But I had an
Give or
interest,
take.
as a child. A great story. We had and it started with a tour. We had a mother that said, our daughter is so interested in meteorology. She's in the 6th grade, and she is writing. She has to write an essay for her English class about what do you want to do when you grow up, kind of thing. But they have to research and interview somebody. Can she interview you? And I said, absolutely, So they came to the office, gave them a tour. She interviewed with me, and it was this girl, I could just tell, was just so fascinated. And she said, I love math, I love science, which is all the things, that you need as kind of that backbone for that degree. Fast forward to just this past summer, 6 months ago roughly, I got an email from that girl, and she said, I just graduated high school, and I just want to let you know that you inspired me to be a meteorologist. I'm starting in college to get my degree in meteorology. Hopefully someday I can
that
work
make
with
you feel good?
How wonderful for you, Chris.
That was just amazing.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, there is a lot of math and science, and really any science. Meteorology is just a mix of all kinds of sciences. Lots of chemistry, obviously, because of the components of our atmosphere, the oxygen and nitrogen and the water vapor and all that. There's all those processes going on, but also there's physics. Lots of physics about how do things move, how do things change with time when they move, and that's all about air masses and how weather moves and changes. We can't just go, what was it like in Kansas City yesterday? That's what it's going to be like here in Lincoln tomorrow. Things are going to change along the way, even just from Havana to Lincoln or Springfield to Lincoln. Things can change dramatically, temperature-wise, with storms. So there's a lot of physics involved. And then we encourage kids in high school, especially when they get to the high school age, just take as much math and science as you can get your hands on. And do some other things, too. We just hired a new crop of 4 brand new forecasters, literally right out of college. Kids. These kids are amazing. I'm telling you. We got 4 really, really good ones, and a couple of them graduated, I think 4 or 5 years ago. But the point is that they all had an interest, from a pretty young age, and have just done an excellent job in college. And the thing that helped those kids stand apart from everybody else was that they did other things on their journey between high school and college and through college. We're talking about going the extra mile, volunteering to do work at even, in their local community, in their church, in their, at the local TV station in the town they grew up in, that type of thing. That's going to school and getting good grades is fantastic. But today you need to be able to communicate is really the most important thing, because the way our agency has switched, and I've been with the Weather Service for 33 years now, and I've seen some huge changes, because when I first came in 33 years ago, it was, here's the forecast, I'm going home, my job is over.
And that was that, literally.
It was just, oh, okay, there's warnings out, my shift is over, I'm going home, the next shift can worry about it. Now, we still do forecasts and we still do warnings, but what we have found, especially with our partners in emergency management, and I just talked about the state EOC, but everybody, the public as well, if you can tell people not just, hey, there's a chance of rain today, or we're going to get some snow, they want to know what's the impact going to be. That's where we're going. And you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to take really everybody talks about the weather. And what did Mark Twain say? Everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it.
That's right.
Right? Well, everybody talks about the weather, but it's really highly complex. And so to take a highly complex science and to be able to explain to someone what they can expect, how it's going to impact them, because impacts are different to everybody. 4 inches of snow to some people could mean I can't go outside because I could slip and fall and I might break a bone. I can't do that. 4 inches of snow to a snowplow driver means I have some income coming in. So we're driving the income. 4 inches of snow means the local hardware store is going to sell some shovels and some salt and things like that.
And little boys and girls will be happy.
And they'll be happy, and they can build the snowman out in the yard and things. So weather impacts everybody differently. 2 inches, well, let's just say even an inch of snow. An inch of snow on the ground in the middle of January, February, we're pretty used to that. By the middle of winter, and we've had some snow already. An inch of snow on the ground on Halloween, for example, like we had a few years ago, there's going to be wrecks all over the interstate, and people they don't know, they can't drive in that because they're not used to it. And think of I-55, how much traffic comes through here that's not local. And so those are some of the folks that aren't going to be familiar with that. So we need people that can communicate well.
That's one thing I noted, Judith K. That probably was your shortest success. Is his ability to communicate.
Oh, dear.
648-5510. 648-5510. Our guest this morning, Chris Miller, cornucopia of knowledge about weather and so forth. By the way, you never did answer me. Who sets off my weather radio?
Oh, no, yeah.
2 in the morning. You do that?
Me once in a while, if I'm still there. Yeah.
I'm going to call you the next time that happens.
You let me know.
Well, we have weather. That's the deal. 24 hours a day. So you can't just go 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 out there.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so now we're into the mid of January. We know that because we're going to have an inauguration today. So we're in the middle of January 2021. When does winter officially end, Mr. Miller?
Winter officially ends, it always changes, but usually it's around March 21st.
Give or take 4 or 5 days.
Now, and I actually got a question from somebody once. In April, we were expecting snow, and we had it in the forecast, and it was several inches. And the guy said, "Why do you call it a winter weather advisory? Because it's not winter anymore; it's spring." Not sure what we should call it.
How do you answer that?
I don't want to call it a spring weather advisory, but yeah, winter ends on March 21st, and we'll see what our furry little friend, the groundhog, says here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Well, we're lucky to have people like Chris Miller here at this weather station. The guy is he's enthused about his job was from the day one when we first had Chris aboard, Judith. You could say, now there's a guy who knows what the heck he's doing and enjoys what he's doing. And your ability to bring in our listeners is just excellent. We appreciate the fact that you spend this time with us. Somebody's got to learn something out there. If both of them are listening,
that's been my goal from the beginning. I want to educate people about the weather.
There you go. Now, let's educate us about the season that's coming next for us, starting with March 21st. As you look at all your dials and gauges and what have you, and talk to your nice people out there, what do you foresee for us?
I'm a little concerned about the spring coming up. I hope I'm wrong, but because I've seen this before. The weather pattern we're in this winter, the temperatures have been all over the place. Look at today. Today's is a little microcosm of what we've had this winter. I got up this morning and I said, oh my gosh, it's 14 degrees at my house in the backyard this morning, and we're calling for a high in the lower 40s. Yeah. That's pretty much this winter in a nutshell. Extremes of temperature, up and down, and we're cold, and then we're warm, and then we're getting rain. And look what happened on New Year's Day with all the ice bending the tree branches and power outages in places, and that was a mess on New Year's Day. As we look at that kind of weather pattern, what we see is typically the following spring is pretty active for thunderstorms and even tornadoes. And not just here in central Illinois, I mean really all over the Midwest. We're already seeing warm air. It's been warmer than normal. Not only here, we've been about 3-4 degrees above normal so far this winter on average. Mm-hmm. But you look south and you look down toward the Gulf Coast and those areas, it's warm down there. We've got a lot of warm, moist air that's just waiting to come in here. And in spring, that's what happens. We get that collision of the air masses. And some springs, it's, last few years, fortunately, our severe storms, tornadoes, have really held off until later May, June. We typically see a little bit earlier start to that after a winter like this one. So we're going to be watching March, especially very carefully, and the first part of April. The one thing that I would say that we have going for us as far as severe weather, kind of keep it out of the area, we have been dry. Yes. Not good news for our friends in agriculture, because you want to get, every fall, you want to get your crops out, and it was dry to get the crops out. It was just, you want to get some moisture recharged in the soil. Yeah. You want to get a hard freeze to kill a lot of the insects. Right. And then you want, spring, so you got the existing moisture, a lot of the bugs are dead, and then you can plant. We're pretty dry. The soil is very, very dry, especially right here. I mean, looks like there's a bullseye on the drought map from Lincoln to Clinton to Springfield to Decatur, right in that kind of triangle there, or that's kind of shape, whatever that shape is. We're in severe drought right now, and
that's an economic impact.
Oh, huge! Yes,
huge. Yeah.
Yeah. When we had the terrible drought back in 2012, so 8-9 years ago now, that impact in the state of Illinois alone was over $1 billion.
Oh my!
Because the crop yields were so low. And you look at what happened in Decatur, at the Lake Decatur, Lake Bloomington, all these lakes, Lake Springfield, all of the lakes were so low. Mm-hmm. You got recreation on the lakes, but also, Decatur pulls a lot of water out of that lake for ADM. Oh, yeah. To do the work that they do. So the economic impact, they were having to lay people off and whatnot. So a drought has huge economic impact in this area. So the point is, the dry soil around here, you need to have a lot of local moisture to feed those storms. And if we're starting out dry, maybe that's the one thing that can keep us from getting the really bad storms. But we do need some moisture. We do need to charge up the soil.
All these little things, they kind of compound, don't they? And one has an impact on the next, and the next, then there's the next bigger impact. You mentioned one time when you were with us, Mr. Miller, that we were considered kind of tornado alley here. I thought that was very interesting because here we are in central Illinois, pretty much insured from real serious weather. Comment before we close about Tornado Alley.
Sure. Yeah, we are definitely in Tornado Alley here.
That's interesting.
Illinois ranks, last I saw, fourth in the country for the most tornadoes per square mile. Yeah. We're higher than Oklahoma. We're higher than Texas. Our friends over in Kansas are a little bit higher than us. But still, we get a lot of tornadoes around here because we've got just the right setup for it. And a professor at Northern Illinois University recently did a study to kind of put that into perspective. Mm-hmm. And he said, yes, his research showed Tornado Alley is shifting a little bit out of the plains and more toward the Mississippi Valley. Oh. So places like Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, Western Kentucky, up into Illinois is really the eastern extent of Tornado Alley, not just the plains. So, and we're right in it here, right up the I-55 corridor. So, yeah, we take that very seriously, and we watch it closely.
Chris Miller, weatherman in charge of our local our local weather station. Again, we thank you, and we continue to thank you because both of our listeners appreciate your expertise. We're happy to have you with us. Yeah. Bring us nothing but sunshine and drifting winds. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure.